Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, y'all. Red O'Loughlin here. Today we're at the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And my guest today is a first-time author, also writes a lot of poetry and combines that poetry into some music. We're going to talk to her about her first book and about her first album. And Angela Van Breemen, would you please join us today?
Yes, it's a delight. Thank you so much for having me.
And you're from Canada. You live up in that area, is that correct?
Yes. I live north of Toronto in the countryside.
Okay. It seems unusual. We have a lot of authors from Canada. I don't know why, but it just sort of comes out. And I was doing some research on you. I couldn't figure out how to pronounce the name of the university you went to, so I had to look it up. It's in Ontario. Surprise. Yes. Guelph, is that the way it's pronounced?
It's perfect. That's absolutely right. You got it.
Okay. That was my guess. Anyway, Past Life's Revenge, a crime thriller, and you have a unique way of solving the mystery. So let's get into that. What prompted you to write Past Life's Revenge? I'm sorry, Past Life's Revenge. If you can hold it up if you want to show it.
Yeah, here's a copy of the book, Past Life's Revenge. It's a David Harris and Emma Jackson mystery. It's the first in the series that I'm planning. And basically, it's an idea that I toyed with for an awfully long time. I grew up in a household surrounded by, my parents were very much interested in the paranormal. And it wasn't unusual to have guests around the dinner table who were psychics and mediums and empaths. And so the concept of reincarnation was something that would be talked about all the time. So it was a concept I was very familiar with from a very early age. In my mid-20s, I started to dabble a little bit with the idea, and I actually started writing that book then. And life got in the way, got busy, needed to make a full-time job and a career. And so I put my aspirations for writing the book away and continued to do my first love, which is writing poetry. My husband, Peter Ponsa, he just recently produced his first book last year called Outfoxed, and he inspired me to maybe pick up this old tattered manuscript and have a go at it. And one day in December of 2022, I came across this manuscript, and it was curled and yellowed. And before I threw it back in the cupboard again, I decided, why don't you at least look at it? And so I looked at it, and I thought, well, there's a lot of things from 35 odd years ago that I want to change. I want to modernize the kind of technology that we have nowadays, but I like the story. And I started writing furiously, and I just kept on going. And the ideas were flowing really beautifully. I had a little bit of a template because of what I'd written originally, but from there, I just kept on going, and I mapped out the rest of the story. And by the end of May of 2023, I had my book. So I was pretty satisfied with that. I also produced an album, and so I gave myself a cooling off period with not looking at the book for a number of months, and went into the studio to produce the music. But the idea of the paranormal has always interested me, and it's always occurred to me that it's really sad that we don't solve as many cases as we could. And there are cases where police departments do actually use do ask for help from psychics. Obviously, you can't have someone just waving their hand and say they did it. You need to have solid evidence. But if it at all helps them be pointed in the right direction, then why not use that? So in my story, David Harris is a man who has suffered from debilitating nightmares his entire life. And he sought help from all sorts of medical professionals and never received the help that he wanted. And so one day, after a particularly harrowing night, he meets a young psychic by the name of Emma. And as they begin to know each other, she suggests that perhaps his nightmares are not really the result of some childhood trauma, but are actually the result of a past life memory. And so from there, the story takes off with David being encouraged to have a past life regression. And during that regression, he learns that he was indeed murdered in his most recent life. And it happened that he reincarnated so quickly that the killer is actually in his mid-50s to early 60s and is still alive.
Now, your husband was also on the show, The Corner Bookstore. Is that true?
Yes, he was last year.
Yeah, I was going to say, there was some memory there that when you mentioned his name, that kind of came out. Okay, so you started this book years and decades ago almost. And was it because of your husband's success in publishing a book that kind of prodded you along?
Yes, it did. I found that it was inspirational. His journey was an interesting one, and he had started the book after we sold our company. We had a company together, a dental supply business, and he signed up for writing courses right away. And I've always been interested in writing because of my poetry, but I've always thought, I'm a poet. I write very succinctly. Everything's to the point. I use words to create vivid imagery with few words. I thought, no, I'm not really a novelist. But I guess I saved that manuscript because there must have been something in the back of my mind thinking, it's a shame to ever throw away anything that you've written or done artistically. And so for that reason, it seemed to me that I should give it a go. But yes, he did inspire me, and I was very proud of him too, of course.
Have you been a singer all your life?
I have an interesting story behind my singing. I've always loved singing, but I had an unfortunate incident when I was very young. The new public school that I went to when I was in my first grade, and there was no kindergarten in those days. And so I guess they decided that they were going to have a school choir. And so I remember my little self walking down this long hall, and this lady was holding what I learned later was a recorder, but it was just this round thing that she blew into and made notes or sounds. And she wanted me to replicate those sounds. And I had no idea what she wanted me to do. And so I made a few croaky noises, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, dear, but you can't sing, and it's really best that you're not in the choir." And so I trudged my little self back to the school to the schoolroom, and went home that day and said to my mom, "They say I can't sing." And my mother said, "That's all right. Don't worry, I can't either." So that was what I thought. That was the misconception. But the thing is, living in the country and always playing outside and being in the forest a lot, I would just automatically go ahead and sing anyway because I loved it, because it felt good. So later in life, in my 20s, if we were at parties and, you'd have a glass of wine or two, then I would sing and everyone always would love it. And it wasn't until after we sold our business that I decided to take formal singing lessons with two very wonderful opera singers. One was Marc Dubois, and the other one is Cynthia Fox-Fucile. And I learned I had a wealth of training from both these individuals. And it just felt so good to take something that I love to do and turn it into a true passion.
When you started writing, you had already been writing poetry. Now you needed to shift your brain to write a novel. How difficult was that?
You would think that maybe there would be a transition and some difficulty. But what I found was that wasn't the case. It was easy to transition. And I believe it's because of the musicality that's within me. So, for example, there's a certain cadence, a certain rhythm to poetry as there is in music. And so I found that when I was writing, I found that same feeling of rhythm and being in the zone was being exhibited. And I think that if a writer is confident in their rhythm and in their cadence, and then the reader will feel it too. And I think that's what makes a book a page turner. That's what makes a book something that people will want to read chapter after chapter. I believe it's the cadence and rhythm. And so I found that writing prose was not as different as I might have thought had I not tried it yet.
Do you want to read a small section out of the book to kind of give people an idea of how that rhythm and that flows in your development of this book? Okay.
Sure, I'd love to. Since I gave a bit of background about the story, I think what I'll do is I'll go to chapter 12, which is after one of David's past life regressions. And the chapter is called George Samuel Larson, which I should explain is actually David's former name in his previous life. David opened his eyes. A nagging feeling told him that something of extreme importance had occurred, but he could not quite grasp what it was. He was certain he had seen the eyes during the session. He heard Anna say, "Wake up, David," but he was too weak and groggy to answer right away. He saw Anna's worried eyes and said, "Something happened, didn't it?" "Yes, we had a breakthrough, but you gave us a scare." "What happened?" "You relived the death of your former life. It was traumatic, and I had trouble bringing you out of the trance." "Did we learn anything worthwhile?" "David, you were named George Larson and either worked or lived here in New Elgin in your previous life." She paused. "You died at the age of 32 on December 15th, 1993. David stared ahead and said, "So you really think my dreams are not just nightmares, but actual memories from a past life?" "Yes, I do." Her expression was thoughtful. "It's unusual, though." "What is?" asked Emma. "Normally souls don't reincarnate so soon after death. Unless..." "Unless?" David swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "The trauma was so great, the soul needed to return sooner." David interrupted. "I was murdered, wasn't I?" "Yes, I think so. I'll review the recording and prepare a transcript for you, but my impression is that you saw and maybe even have known your killer." This is a lot to process. I'd recommend you review the transcripts, and then we can schedule another session. I wonder. David looked back and forth between Anna and Emma, his face pinched with concern. "Yes?" asked Anna. "If this is all real, and I was murdered 30 years ago, there's a good chance the killer could still be alive." "True," said Anna, "and still be relatively young. possibly still in his 50s, maybe even early 60s. What are you thinking? Asked Emma. Hang on a sec. David grabbed his iPhone and typed in his query. Just found this website called Canada Cold Cases. It's a database of unsolved murders and disappearances. Is there a search tool? Asked Emma, unable to hide her excitement. Yep. Typing in George Larson. Oh my God. I've got a hit. His face turned white. He turned the display around for both Anna and Emma to read.
Very, very interesting. So as part of your crime solution, the mindset, you as I read in preparation for today, you use paranormal to help solve the crime. So in this particular case, it's the ghost or what that's actually solving the crime in this particular case. What is the paranormal aspect of this solution for the murder?
Well, first of all, the solution is not necessarily using a ghost, although we do have a spirit later on in the story that does surface, but that is probably giving away too much of the story. But a quick answer is from there, David starts to research using conventional methods. So because he found this article on Canada Cold Cases, he's now learned that, in fact, someone by the name of George Samuel Larson did exist. And he finds the name of the police officer who was involved in the original investigation of the murder. And he does get clues using both the paranormal with Anna's help, who is the psychic, as well as Emma's. But he also is very keen, being a lawyer, to make sure that any evidence he does collect is still rooted in solid evidence that the police can use.
Have you ever met any ghosts?
Have I ever met any ghosts? I have had significant dreams where I know that I have met people who have passed on. And really, there is a subject between ghosts and actual spirits. I kind of sometimes think that you have to be sure of what you're encountering. If you're seeing a vision that is maybe attached to a home or a house or a thing, that could be residual memory or vibration. It doesn't mean that it's actually a spirit. But of course, there are spirits as well. And I think that I have been in touch with them via my dreams, for sure.
My daughter works in law enforcement. She started out in a prison here in Texas. And part of her duty early on was picket duty outside with a gun almost as tall as she is. She's 4'10". And out there, they have a ghost named George. And George loved to play with my daughter's hair. And so she's out there and she can feel somebody pulling on her hair, and she turns around, there's nobody there. And so this went on quite often. This was not an isolated case, but she was one day inside working and 2:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden this inmate appears in front of her, which he should not have been there. And so as she's starting to walk toward him, he walks right through the wall. So there's several things there that I've found over time that I guess people die in prison, or who knows, I don't know. Anyway, but I guess prisons are a good place for ghosts to occupy while they're waiting for their next, meal or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah, I think so. Like depending on what kind of death they experienced, maybe they were murdered in prison. And if they were murdered in prison, sometimes a soul has a hard time transitioning from this plane of existence. And so they are likely to stay around. And I love the story about this playful George. Was there any chance of finding out more about who he was? Were they ever able to investigate? That sounds so curious and intriguing.
I don't know. All I know is that he played with a lot of girls' hairs that were out there. They would tell her ahead of time, beware, it's probably going to happen. And sure enough, it happened once, happened twice. It was not a one of kind of thing. So, but
Cool.
anyway, now when you're
And how
writing your
did
book,
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying how refreshing that people wouldn't discount it as nonsense, but recognize that there is something intangible that we on this plane may not always understand, but at least to recognize it, I think that's terrific.
So when you're writing, obviously a big part of the writing is editing. Uh, Tell us a little bit about, because some people have a developmental editor to help them, with the scenes and the transitions and the character development, and the locations and the plot and all that. Did you have one of those?
Actually, what I did was I belonged to a group called the Wordsmiths, and they're located in Alliston. And I worked with them some of them were beta readers for me, but I also worked with an editor who has also published quite a few books as well. Her name is Diane Bader, and she gave me a lot of good structural suggestions. And I also then had another editor to proof. That was more proofing as opposed to the developmental editing. I had another editor at the end also work with me. So I went through 2 levels of editors, and I also relied on the beta readers because they gave me some solid input as to if something seemed credible or not. And one of them is psychic, and so I asked her for her impressions on if I had portrayed some of the paranormal scenes in the right way. So there's a lot of research that's needed, but the developmental part is really, really key as well.
Would you hold your book up one more time? Because I want to talk about the cover.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, the cover art. How did you get how did you decide on that art? Did somebody just say, what do you think about this? Or did you have that in mind before you actually got the design done for the book?
Well, I designed this cover. Originally, I had a completely, I went through quite a few, I went through quite a few versions of what I wanted. And it was actually really, it was easier. I do graphic arts work. And yet for myself, I found that it was a little bit challenging. And originally I did have an image of David and Emma on the front cover. And it was brought to my attention, and this was really good, solid advice, that unless it's a romance, you don't really want to necessarily have pictures of people on the front cover. And so what I did was I removed the images of the 2 people, and I just went with a ghostly apparition and the colors. So I retained the majority of the cover. I just got rid of the people and gave it more of this spooky, supernatural look. But I do love doing artwork. I've been doing that for a long time, like graphics artwork. And so, but it was fun doing a book cover. It really was.
Is this going to be a series? And if so, when is the next book coming out?
I'm working on the next book. I'm about a third of the way through, and it is definitely a series where Emma and David did successfully apprehend the killer of his previous self. And they've realized that there is a niche and a need. And so they are going to be working with a police officer in the department, and they are going to be teaming up to use the paranormal to solve cold cases. So and this new book is going to be called Revenge is Not Enough.
Ah, okay. So you're keeping that thought of revenge in there. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your poetry. No, before I go to the poetry and to your album, how did you do marketing for your book so that people, obviously you had beta readers and a book club that you belong to, but tell us a little bit about your marketing journey for letting people know you have a book out there and what it's about, because that's always important. We, as writers, we're not marketers as a general rule. Sometimes that's a foreign area to get into, and we rely on people. And, oh, I wish I had done that earlier. So tell us a little bit about your marketing adventure with this book, and then we'll get a little bit into your album.
Absolutely. So my husband and I, we had a dental supply business, which we sold 11 years ago. And so we always realized that a good portion of our business growth had to rely on marketing and promotion. And so we always would put back whatever we could back into marketing. And so when Peter wrote his book, it sort of dovetails together this answer. We both recognize the need that in order for for him to get the coverage and the recognition that he needed, we needed to work with someone to help us. And so Peter started working with Mickey Mickelson of Creative Edge. And so I work with Mickey as well. He's been marvelous booking events such as this one today and many others, podcasts, radio, TV, magazine interviews. And I really think that it's a bit of a slow burn. So if you think that, you're going to spend X number of dollars on promotional work like this, it takes time, and it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. So that would be my biggest advice. With respect to being on social media, I try to do my best to be active on social media. I've done a recent book launch. I'm going to be going later this month to Chapters Indigo in Newmarket, Ontario, for an author event where they're very gracious. They invite an author and to show their books to their patrons as they come in the door. And so I'm very excited for that opportunity. I have not yet dabbled and investigated Facebook marketing as well as marketing through Amazon, but that is something that is on my list to do. But I feel that the coverage that I'm getting working with Mickey is very good.
Do you find one social media platform that is better geared for crime and mystery thriller kind of books?
I mean, with respect to whether it's Facebook or Instagram,
Yep.
or
You find from your audience that
yeah.
they respond back to you. Is there one for that particular genre of book that is more interactive with your audience?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if I can say specifically Instagram or Facebook are better than Twitter. I'm not, or I should say X nowadays, of course. I don't know a definitive answer to that, but I have noticed that people seem to interact more on Instagram with respect to letting others know about their books and what they're writing and what they're doing. I do see some on Facebook as well, and I love following the different groups, and I find that very interesting to share ideas. But Instagram seems to be shorter and sweeter for putting something up, and people only need a few seconds to read it because everyone's got short attention spans nowadays. We're inundated with so much information all the time, right? So a pictorial approach, I guess, is a good thing, but I can't give you specifics to say that it's better to promote this genre on Instagram or Facebook or some of the other social media platforms. But I do think that you need them regardless of the genre.
Yeah, I found a lot of success on Facebook because I would order 5 different covers from a designer like Fiverr.com. So they're inexpensive, and I put them up A or B, B or C, C or D. And ironic, the ones that I like, nobody likes. The ones that that's okay. I love that one. So anyway, so I got a lot.
Interesting.
and I find that the readers are different than our authors, because our author's mind has this in mind, but that's not necessarily always translate exactly to what our readers want. But let's jump into the poetry and into your singing. So how long have you been writing poetry?
Oh, since about 10 years of age. Quite a while.
Have you published any books with poetry?
I plan to. I haven't as of yet. There's a couple times my poems have appeared in and out in anthologies, but for the most part, no. And I do have that on my list to work on either towards the end of this year or early next year, because I have quite a collection, and I think they're interesting because they span such a long period of time. I think I might group it as in different stages of my life, because I think it might very well be interesting to see the evolution of how I developed as a person you could almost watch me growing up by reading the different stages of my poetry prowess, so to speak, or lack thereof. Who knows?
So there may be a series, it may be multiple books, but it's coming down the road.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, now you took your poetry and used that as the framework for your album, In the Breeze. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Um, I I love all sorts of types of music, but I'm particularly fascinated with Celtic music. And sometimes people ask me, well, what's a Dutch girl? Why is she interested in Celtic music? And the short answer is my uncle married a Scotswoman, and so I got exposed to this beautiful lilting music. So there are 11 songs on the album, but 3 of them are actually my own original pieces. And the first one is called In the Breeze, which is the reason for the name of the title of the album as well. And this is a poem I wrote while I was gardening, and I was really thinking of my mom that day quite a bit and missing her greatly. And so pretty soon a poem was coming in my mind. So I had to sort of dust off myself and get into the house and write this poem down right away. And a good friend of mine heard the piece and she said, "This is so beautiful. I'd like to put this to music for you, something that will really show off the range in your voice." And it's a very contemporary piece, but I'm completely in love with it. And so the music was written by Raina Valcour, but the poetry is definitely something that was inspired in the garden when I was thinking about my mom. The second piece is called Do You Hear the Drums? And we have a really good friend who plays the handpan drum. And he came over one day he's a house painter by profession. He has his own company. And he came over to do a little bit of work for us. And knowing my love of singing, and he wanted me to hear his new instrument, and he started playing it. And I was just thrown with the beauty of this music. It's like a little mini steel drum that sits on your lap, but it's kind of shaped like a UFO. And it's got the notes along the top of the instrument. It's in D minor. Anyway, he started playing it and I was entranced. And before I knew it, I was singing words. I had the melody. And I said, Casey, this has got to be a song. And so we worked on it for about a year before I recorded it before I did the recording for the album, until we were really happy with it. And I'm thrilled with that song. It's very inspirational and it's very encompassing to recognize that we should come together as all peoples and not, trying to eliminate the strife that we see so much in this world nowadays. And then the third song is a sea shanty that was written during COVID. And that one was interesting. It was one of our challenges from the Wordsmiths writing group to write about the sea. And before I knew it, I was writing a sea shanty. And I had the words and the melody. Everything was coming together. And so that's the third original piece on the album. The rest of the songs are very traditional Celtic pieces, but they've been done with a very unique approach. And they were produced by Mars Giamarco from Red Egg Studio. So that is my journey with the CD or the album, and it came out in April of this year.
Do you have a copy of the CD or the album there you can show the audience?
I meant to bring one and I don't have one, and I'd have to run out and get it, and that would interrupt things. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't think
I should have asked
to
before
bring
we
that.
started.
But it is on my website, so if you wanted to take a look at it, it was a real joy to be part of 2 huge projects last year. The book, finishing the book, and then heading right into the studio. It was a lot of fun. It really was.
I saw an article. I think you wrote on Medium 5 things you need to be a successful author or writer. Is that your article?
It sounds like it. Yes, there's Past Life's Revenge. Yes.
So 5 things you need to be successful as a writer or author. What are 1 or 2 that are absolute mandatory to have?
Well, I think never throw away anything that you've written. And I think I'm a good example of when I wrote that manuscript and never threw it away. I'm so grateful that I didn't, because although it's very different for what I've written compared to what I wrote then, it was inspirational. And I think that anytime you write something and maybe it doesn't fit, then save it, because it could fit for something else and be the inspiration for a totally different story. That's one thing I'd like to share with people. The other thing I'd like to share is, people talk about writer's block, and I'm sorry, I wrote that article a while ago. But one of the things that I think about when it comes to writer's block is, people say sit in front of your computer, write every day, no matter what. And my feeling is that even if you're not in front of your computer, um, give yourself time to relax and think. Don't try to force, because if you try to force, you're just going to get frustrated. So give yourself the patience and kindness to realize that maybe it doesn't work today, but then you can work on another aspect of your book. So if you're not writing fresh material, then read something that you wrote the previous day or the previous week, whatever the case may be, and that might even just be inspiration enough to get you rolling again. But don't get frustrated and never give up, and just keep the belief and faith in yourself.
Angela, one of the things that I've been passing on the last couple, 3-4 weeks here on the Corner Bookstore was an article I saw by Hemingway that was summarized, but one of his key points just stuck in my brain was, never finish the end of the chapter, even though you know the end of it. Walk away, come back tomorrow, because you already know the ending. But if you finish the ending, now all of a sudden you have to start with the new one. There's a transition. But when you come back, you already know the end of that chapter or paragraph or whatever, and you can pick it up super easily. And now the transition happens because the brain has been thinking about it overnight. So that was one of the things that he used on a regular basis. So he did not have a problem with writer's block, because he stopped before the block ever occurred. And I thought, I write nonfiction is what I do. And that makes all the sense in the world, because it's just, I know what I want to say. And then, okay, where was I at yesterday? And if I had completed everything, it would have been, okay, that's the end of that one. Now I need to start something new, and my brain's going to start new. So I'm going to start doing that on my writings, is the fact that, okay, I know how this is, I want to wrap, walk away, come back, boom, or come back 4 hours later, it doesn't matter. But you stop when you still have material to write and you know what you want. And I thought that was a great piece of information.
That is really interesting. I know that we have some writers who say, just keep writing, don't stop, just keep on going, don't edit, don't look back. What I actually like doing, and it's not precisely what you described, but what I do is I always read the last half chapter, the last part of the chapter that from the day before. And I find just reading that puts me back into that. Remember, I was talking about cadence and rhythm. I find that as soon as I start reading and refreshing my memory of what I did for the last page of the previous chapter, I always feel very, very much in tune already. So for me, I've never really struggled with that. It's the same with the poetry. It just comes so easily. That's maybe one of the reasons why I thought it would be a hard transition to writing books, because when I'm writing the poetry, it's done fairly quickly and then of course you start looking at it, analyzing it and tweaking it. So, which is editing, obviously. So that's very interesting. Don't finish it. Finish it when you get back, and then you start again into the rhythm. I think this is the theme, though, isn't it? It's about the rhythm. It's about keeping that cadence, about keeping that musicality going with your writing so that you don't lose the thread.
Okay, we're at the end of the show here. How do people get your book, and how do they get in touch with you if they want to have you speak or whatever it may happen to be, as to help you along?
Okay, so if they want to speak, then all engagements are made through Mickey Mickelson of Creative Edge. if you want to find my book, depending on how you want to purchase it, the easiest way to find about me, and then you can get to all the links necessary, would be to go to my website, which is angelavanbreemen.ca. That's probably the simplest way.
Okay, so Mickey Mickelson, Creative Edge,
Creative
is
Edge, yes.
pharmacist, and your website is Angela Van Breemen, Angela Angela Van Van Breemen BREEMEN.ca, because it's Canada,
Yes.
and that way they can have your contact information. They can buy your book on your website too.
Yes, they could. If they want to go locally, of course, there's always an issue with the cost of shipping. So if you are living out of town and in the States, I would recommend going to Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it in soft cover as well as hardcover. So those are options too.
Well, fantastic. Angela, I really and truly appreciated your time this morning. This morning, my time. I almost knew. In fact, it's just about noon time here. Anyway, so thank you so very much. I look forward. I'm sure we're going to bump into each other down the road, either virtually on social media or someplace, or maybe on another show here on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. So, Angela, again, thanks for your time today. And I really appreciate your journey as not only a writer, an author, and a singer. So that's kind of a unique combination of talents there. So you take care, and I will see you later on.
Thank you. You take care too. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I loved our conversation.
And this is Red O'Laughlin. We're signing off on the Corner Bookstore today. And our very next event is called The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And today I have another author, but she's also a member of the USA Global TV and Radio Network as a host for her own show. So I'm looking forward to interviewing Anne Scotland, and she's an award-winning author, motivational life coach, and many, many other things. So please join us literally in about 12 minutes here. It's going to be 1 o'clock Eastern, noon here in Central Time, and for The Wise Ones on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And immediately following that show, I will be wrapping up my show on the heart of health on my show, Talking Head. So Red O'Laughlin signing off, the Corner Bookstore on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Take care, y'all. Bye now.
My name is Dr. Felix Kravitz, and I am the founder of cybersecurityeasy.com, LLC. We live in a world full of vulnerabilities and cyber risks. We spend almost 4.5 hours a day on our mobile phones. It's over 7 hours of screen time daily when including computer use. We often forget that this convenience comes with risks. Published data predicts that the cost of cybercrime will exceed $10.5 trillion in 2025. These numbers encompass not only businesses, but also each one of us, including our children and our parents. In 2023, the FBI reported over $3.4 billion lost by seniors aged 60 and older. Cybersecurityeasy.com LLC's initiative is to massively support the community by providing cyber safety coaching and improving social engineering awareness. Our goal is to make social engineering concepts of cybersecurity easier to understand. We work with business teams, seniors, and educational institutions, both individually and in groups. We cover various topics from phone phishing attacks to AI-generated voice cloning, robocalls, password protection, and more using life examples. Talk to us today. Call us at 847-845-9360 or email us at info@cybersecurityeasy.com.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents our partner and sponsor, Mr. Philip Sykes and the British School of Excellence. Building confidence, changing lives. And now, proudly presenting the Polished Professional.
On a transformative journey with the British School of Excellence's comprehensive suite of masterclasses, crafted to elevate your professional and personal life. 8 outstanding modules will elevate you to the next level. Module 1, exploring life's purpose, delves into the depths of self-discovery, guiding you to chart your unique path to fulfillment and success. Module 2, Mastering Professional Presence and Confidence. This masterclass is a deep dive into the art of self-assurance and commanding presence, which is essential for standing out in today's competitive landscape. Module 3, Learn the secrets of visual impact, how to curate a personal style that amplifies your professional brand. Module 4, Mastering Professional Etiquette and Communication Excellence, navigating the nuances of corporate interaction with grace and tact. Module 5, Elegance in Eloquence. We impart powerful techniques to captivate and persuade any audience with your oratory skills. Module 6, Unlock the potential of your emotional intelligence, EQ, and harness the ability to connect, empathize, and lead with emotional savvy. Module 7, Mastering DISC, building a gateway to understanding behavioral styles, fostering better personal and professional relationships. Module 8, Mastery in Dining Etiquette, building your confidence to perfect the subtleties of dining with finesse, enhancing your social savviness at any table. Step into the Polished Professional program where poise, elegance, and excellence aren't just taught, they're instilled for life. Join us to redefine your potential and polish your professional edge.
To learn more, go to thebritishschoolofexcellence.com. The British School of Excellence are investors in people. Let us invest in you.